everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and we just had a blizzard with 1 to 2 feet of snow, and I'm feeling something icy, something shimmery, something sparkly. And so that's what we're going to dye today. And when thinking about sparkle and winter and shine, well, I decided to go for both sparkle through Stellina and silk that we have here. So I have 3 different yarn bases from 3 different companies that we are going to play with today. We have Dyer Supplier's Silvery Sock, which is a yarn that is 60% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 20% Stellina. And this yarn is so jam-packed with Stellina, check out that glitter, that it almost looks gray. From Wool to Dye For, I have the Sparkle DK, a base I've never dyed before. But this is 75% merino, maybe non-superwash, 20% silk, and 5% Stellina. So still nice and sparkly, a little bit more subtle sparkle, but it also has some of the shine to it from silk. Finally, I have Luminance, which is a lace weight 100% mulberry silk from Knit Picks. I will have links to all 3 of these yarn bases down in the video description. I am an affiliate with Dyer Supplier and Knit Picks, so those 2 links will be affiliate links. Now I need to prepare the yarn for dyeing. So I'm going to open up the hanks and put on a reusable nylon zip tie just to help keep things a little bit ordered. I'm very intrigued by this Wool to Dye For base, and yeah, just thought it would be fun to include with the rest because I had a sample of it. If you have a wholesale account with Wool to Dye For, they offer a lot of their bases as samples with a limit of 1 sample per base per order, really. But I think that if you don't have a wholesale account, you might not see them on the website, but you can reach out and ask if that is an option. But now we need to pre-soak our yarn. I did double check on Wool to Dye For's website, and the Sparkle DK is non-superwash. They do have a superwash Sparkle DK yarn, but that has nylon instead of silk, and then obviously superwash merino. But I am very excited by all of them. Now, technically, the silk probably needs a lot more time to pre-soak than the other bases, because if it's not well saturated, then we aren't going to get good color penetration. But what I'm feeling is maybe just doing some painting with dry powders and not necessarily going for speckles, allowing some spread of the colors, but just sort of seeing where we take us and playing with some, well, I think I'm going to go with blue and purple for just feeling icy and snowy, even though there's some warmth to both of those colors. I just think it'll make me feel warm inside. But anyway, I'm going to let these pre-soak for at least 30 minutes. For colors today, I think that I want to play with Dharma acid dyes in Baby Blue Eyes and Hyacinth. Hyacinth is like a beautiful, it's not a pinky purple, it's more of a blue purple, but it's one that I haven't played with enough, and it's pigmented and a lot of fun. Baby Blue Eyes also is more pigmented than you might think. So I don't know how icy this will ultimately feel because I'm not necessarily going for something that feels super pastel, but I want to create something that feels very fun. So we're going to apply the dye cold because that will allow me to manipulate it more when we are over here. But I'm going to go ahead and add 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of white vinegar, and then some of our pre-soak liquid in here. Just so that way we start off with some acid and some liquid in here. So I can add more liquid as needed, but I think that what I want to do now is go put on my deluxe rubber respirator, safety glasses, and gloves so we can start applying these colors on here. So while I am going to be painting pretty much with these powders, finger painting somewhat with these powders, speckles are not, I I don't mind if we end up with some speckles, but speckles aren't the end game here. Because I'm planning on letting these colors spread and layer. And so I'm just really excited where we may end up and what we'll see when we compare these three colors. Now, I've said finger painting, and I kind of mean it. I'm taking my gloved fingertips. I didn't prepare what I like to call a yarn mop for this. Whenever I refer to something as a yarn mop, it is just some yarn that I have on hand that I use to wipe off my fingers and things onto during a dyeing project. And because I'm planning on applying the colors dry and manipulating it and moving things around before we set the color, I mean, maybe I could have used a yarn mop, but I don't have one today. I am curious how far these colors are spreading. But I am liking the tones that we have, knowing that things are going to end up being significantly more pastel. Oh, that was some Hyacinth on there, and so let's just treat things similarly. I do know things will look darker when wet than they will when dry, and that is fine with me. Sort of adding these colors. Whoa. Okay, the Hyacinth is like disappearing. I wonder if that'll show up again once we apply heat. I've seen this with some colors before, because I swear it surprised me with how pigmented it was. But I mean, where did it go? Like, you see the dark specks, and then I move it through, and I don't see it anymore. So I have a feeling we're going to end up with a bit of a surprise. And already, I am seeing it deepen a bit over here. But that is strange, right? I was going to flip and move it, but instead, I think I want to wait 10 minutes just to see what the Hyacinth does to decide if I want to add more now or not. It's been 10 minutes and the Hyacinth has shown up to the party. The fun thing for me right now is that our 100% silk, the colors feel the most vibrant. Now, I knew that with silvery sock, the colors would feel more muted because the silver Stellina sort of reduces some of that brightness because it gives the base more of a gray hue overall. And there's not as much in here, which has some silk, but I'm amazed with how much more muted the colors feel on this merino silk blend versus the 100% silk, which just feels like, you know what it feels like? And I guess it does make sense because in the pan, when the yarn was bare, it did look like white, gray, and then something in the middle. But it looks like I have a saturation filter, and that, you know, this is, I've turned up the saturation here so it looks extra saturated, and then I've desaturated it a bit down there. Before I get ready to dye up more, I want to flip the yarn so we can see what the color penetration is like. I am not expecting that all of the color has absorbed on any of these. It's possible, I mean, I'm not seeing color down below. It's possible that we'll see some of that. These skeins are also all different lengths, so that is going to come into play as well. But now that we're on this other side, I'm not gonna worry about trying to get blue where I had blue before and purple where I had purple. I'm going to mix it up, I think, and go where I feel like I want the colors to be. But I am going to try, I think, to start with the Hyacinth moving forward. And I don't know how long I'll wait between flips. I'm gonna sort of play that by ear. But let's add more color. I put my respirator mask back on and I was still wearing my safety goggles. And then I changed my mind and started with the baby blue eyes, mainly because I could see where I put it. And so that is a very important thing, to be able to see where I put it, because I know that the hyacinth will become more saturated eventually, but once I go and smush it in, I don't really know where it is right away. I didn't wait 10 whole minutes before flipping the yarn again, but I did wait a little bit because I wanted to check and see if I was happy with the amount of hyacinth, if I needed to add more right then before moving on, because I felt like that was pretty important. All right, I think we are pretty good. At least I think we're ready to go and start heating things up. I'm just adding a little bit of water that had some vinegar in it from another project, just so that way we have a little bit more liquid around the edges. But let's go to the stove and start heating this up. So how well doing a cold finger painting kind of thing will work really does depend on how quickly the particular colors you're using will strike to the yarn. Some colors strike so fast that by the time you speckle it on, especially if it's a superwash merino nylon blend, the speckles could start hitting like really fast. I don't think silvery sock goes that fast, but that's because there's a lot of non-wool stuff in there. And then as for the others, I'm still amazed with how gray the hyacinth looks on the center skein. But I am curious to see how things will end up looking overall. I don't want to simmer this to death or anything, but I do have the heat on higher right now just because it will cover more surface area. But I think now that we're starting to see some bubbles, I'm going to reduce the heat to low. And then, because I have this from an earlier project today, I'm going to cover this with tin foil. And I don't cover things a lot because I like to see what's going on. But when I have something that I want to have on slightly lower heat, and I want to make sure that that heat is trapped, foil makes sense. So I will keep an eye on it to make sure that we still have plenty of liquid. I'll try to check back in, but otherwise I'll come back in 30 minutes. As I promised, I checked in on the yarn during the 30 minutes, and I don't think y'all are ready for this. Oh my gosh! Look what the purple did! This is so cool. I was like, the whole time I was like, man, okay, there's still a bit more purple color. A lot of the color has absorbed. I kept looking at the purple and thinking, gee, I remember this color having like so much saturation. It's kind of a shame that, you know, it's not really looking that bright. But it is. It just took heat. Needed some heat. So let's add some more liquid. In doing so, I exposed a lighter patch here on our luminance. I have a feeling we're going to find more of those, but I'm also going to go ahead and pick up the yarn. Wow, you can see the middle one is a lot longer than the others, and put it down. I am okay with there being some lighter patches in here. I just want to give everything a chance for these colors to absorb. Most of the color is in the yarn. I suppose, oh dear, I mean, no, I'm okay with the icier sections, because part of me is like, ooh, I could add more color right now. But no, I want to let it be. I want to compare these bases, even though these bases are, I think, hard ones to compare to one another because they're not that similar. Beyond sparkle and silk. Sparkle and silk. And so it's all fun. I do also want to add a nice healthy splash of vinegar. This way, you know, we know we have enough for these colors to set well. And I do want to keep in mind we have two non-superwash colorways here. But I am going to put the lid back on and heat it for 30 more minutes. I will actually add a bit more water just so that way things can float. We have tons of water and acid in here now, but the goal is to hopefully get the rest of those colors to absorb so that way the water will be clear and washing will be easy. So I'm going to cover and I'll see you in 30 minutes. It's only been about 20 minutes and I just checked in. We are nice and super steamy. I think the only reason why I don't like using a cover is just it's not as pretty for filming. This is really pretty. I think this one ended up being way more purple than blue. Well, there's still blue in there. But again, when I was doing the purple, I kept adding more because I couldn't really see it. Now, I do still see some hints of purple in the water, and I'm not going to let myself worry about that too much. We are so steamy. I am going to turn off the heat and let this cool off slowly here in the pan. It will have more time to absorb. Maybe we'll absorb the rest of those purples or maybe not. But once we are cool, then we'll get ready to wash the yarn. I am filming something else right now, but the yarn is significantly cooler. Ooh, this color is so pretty. It's very blurple. And the yarn is still mega shiny. We definitely went a lot deeper than I expected. And so this is both an example of how what we did worked, but also how what we did maybe isn't the best plan if you want something that isn't very saturated. But anyway, I am not seeing any color left in the dye bath. And so now, once things finish cooling, then we can wash it. Let's wash our snowy yarn, and you can just see how sparkly those skeins are, even when wet. Sometimes being able to see what's sparkly is really dependent on the lighting that you have available in your room. Sometimes it can be harder to see if the lighting is too even. So far, so good. Let's add some dish soap, and Rebecca, you need to remember that we've got some non-superwash yarn in here. I don't think silk felts, but I believe it's definitely a lot weaker when wet than it is dry, so I definitely don't want to snap that or anything. And that water is looking really clear, which is fantastic. Now, right now, the color value for all of these feels fairly similar. The silk definitely felt a little bit brighter, and the other two maybe slightly more muted because of the Stellina color. But I'm really curious to see how they'll look when dry, because I expect that our silk blends are going to feel like they don't have as much color. And so that is something that is worth remembering when right now they all feel fairly similar. But I am going to finish rinsing out the silk, which is basically done. Put the yarn through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry so we can look at the finished yarn. This has been a video that has had a lot of surprises and twists and turns throughout it. From our Hyacinth disappearing on the yarn, only to show up in its beautiful saturated way once we really started applying heat. That was spectacular. To our silk looking the brightest during the dyeing process. And I think that it's just really funny that our silvery sock felt the most muted while we were dyeing it, with the sparkle decay somewhere in the middle. But now the silvery sock is the brightest. Our 100% silk is the most pastel. And then the non-superwash wool silk Stellina blend is, you know, again, somewhere in the middle. So I find that just to be so interesting. Now, one reason why this happens is that I think silk becomes a little bit translucent once it is wet. And because it's more opaque while it's dry, the white of that silk fiber has more of an impact overall. And so I think that's why the colors are much more pastel. And again, why, if you want the silk to have the same depth of shade as the other yarns, you need to put a lot more dye on it. And that is not something I've really tried. I have dyed silk a handful of times. I have not yet tried to dye super saturated silk and to really push that depth of shade to see and get something that has like a really bold color. So if that's something you would like to see, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm a little nervous that I'd end up with a bleeding mess, and also 100% silk yarn is a little more expensive, and so that's why I don't use it as often as I may otherwise try. But oh, I think I still have some 100% silk scarves that weren't very expensive, and so I can try going for super saturated colors and play with depths of shade on those. I have to find them though. All three of these yarn bases give us glitter or shine in different ways. Whether it's from the silk being shiny as a beautiful, glorious fiber, or from adding the Stellina in to give more of a glitter feel. Dyer Supplier's Silvery Sock is a yarn base I have been obsessed with for a long time, and I think this may have been my last skein, so I'm going to need to order some more. The Sparkle Decay from Wool to Dye For is very, very unique with the silk and the sparkle in there. I wish that this was available in more yarn weights because I'm very intrigued by it. And I'm also tempted to get more of it to play with because it is a very, very lovely, soft, silky yarn. It's a yarn that I would really enjoy working with. Plus it has a little bit of extra sparkle. And then Luminance, I actually have a few more skeins because I stocked up a little bit. It is beautiful. I have knit with 100% silk lace weight using some 100% silk yarn that I actually spun myself. And I'm trying to remember if I also made one that I had dyed myself or if I had just used the one that I spun from Silk Hankies. But either way, this is beautiful. And the purple and the blue have worked so well here. They are so subtle. It is just really, really wonderful. Of the three colorways, the Luminance is absolutely the iciest, the winteriest, just because of the depth of shade that we ended up with. But man, this video is just a really good example of how not only is it helpful and useful to be really familiar with a particular yarn base to know how it absorbs color so you can get the colors you want, but it's also handy to play around with your dyes in lots of different ways so you know what to expect and how to expect. Like, I knew that Hyacinth created a very beautiful purple color because I've successfully dyed it in the past, but I just did not know how it would behave as a dry powder. I mean, potentially, if I went back and watched my, like, swatching all of my purple dyes video, then I would remember that, and I may have pointed that out then. But certainly, this is something I've seen with a couple other colors before, but I don't necessarily remember off the top of my head which ones they are. No matter what, these colors are gorgeous and I am thrilled. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and please subscribe, turn on notifications. I publish videos at least twice a week, and I'm really making an effort in 2022 to play with more of these yarn samples that I have, play with bases outside of my normal comfort zone. So that way I can give my impressions actually working with them and learn more myself, and then also help you learn as well. I have an Etsy shop, ChemKnits Creations, where most of the yarn that I dye ends up, and so it's worth going and checking that out. And now I'm really curious, which one of these bases is your favorite? They're all very different. They could be used for very different types of projects. But also something about it is just really hard to choose. I think if I were to pick a favorite, it would be the middle one, the DK Weight Merino Silk Stellina blend. But that's partially because that base is so new to me and feels so different. I am very, very intrigued by that, especially because I hand wash most of my projects, so using superwash yarn is not essential for me. And so that's, in this case, that one may be one that excites me the most. Maybe. But I love the depth of shade of the colors on the silvery sock. Like, those colors call to me. But I also love the subtle pastel elegance of the luminance. I don't know. You help me pick. Thank you so much for watching.